The Senate Banking Committee hearing room buzzed with tension as Senator Kyrsten Sinema smoothly adjusted her microphone, her signature colorful outfit, today a vibrant purple dress with a yellow cardigan, standing out against the chamber's muted tones. Her voice, deceptively gentle yet unmistakably dismissive, cut through the air. "With all due respect to our House colleague," Sinema said, a thin smile barely masking her condescension. Representative Crockett's testimony on banking regulations seems based more on progressive talking points than economic reality. Perhaps those newer to Congress don't fully understand the delicate balance required in financial oversight. Cameras caught the immediate reaction of Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, the former civil rights attorney from Texas, invited as an expert witness to discuss predatory lending practices affecting minority communities. Her expression remained composed, but her eyes narrowed slightly at Sinema's obvious attempt to discredit her. Committee Chairman Sherrod Brown shifted uncomfortably, while Ranking Member Tim Scott raised his eyebrows at the unexpected hostility from Sinema, who had built her independent brand on projecting civility while defying party lines. But no one anticipated what happened next. Without a word, Crockett calmly opened a slim black portfolio on the table before her and extracted a single document. As Sinema continued her critique, seemingly oblivious to the growing tension, Crockett placed the paper directly in front of her microphone and waited. The document bore an official letterhead that several senators recognized instantly. A visible gasp came from Senator Elizabeth Warren, who had a clear view of its contents from her seat. The chamber fell silent as Crockett leaned toward her microphone, her voice steady and clear. "Senator Sinema, before you continue questioning my expertise, I believe you should explain this to the committee. Before diving into this explosive confrontation that's sending shockwaves through Washington, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our breaking political coverage." Now let's see exactly how this dramatic showdown unfolded and why Crockett's proof left the entire Senate Banking Committee stunned. Kyrsten Sinema had long cultivated her image as the Senate's unpredictable maverick. At 47, the Arizona Independent, who had famously left the Democratic Party in 2022, had become known for her theatrical thumbs-down votes, eccentric fashion choices, and an uncanny ability to position herself at the center of pivotal legislative moments. Prior to the hearing, Sinema had been photographed entering the Senate building in her eye-catching ensemble, pausing briefly for reporters, but refusing to answer questions about her position on the banking regulations being discussed. "I'll share my thoughts in the appropriate forum," she had said with her characteristic enigmatic smile. Behind the scenes, financial disclosure reports revealed Sinema had received substantial campaign contributions from banking industry PACs, $1.4 million over the past 2 years, more than any other member of the Banking Committee. These connections had raised eyebrows among progressive watchdog groups, but had largely escaped mainstream media scrutiny. Sinema had prepared meticulously for this hearing, which was examining potential regulations on high-interest loans disproportionately marketed to Black and Latino communities. Her staff had assembled talking points emphasizing regulatory flexibility and avoiding unintended consequences for financial institutions, phrases that industry lobbyists had crafted and distributed to sympathetic lawmakers. Across the witness table sat Jasmine Crockett, the 43-year-old Democratic representative from Texas, serving her second term in Congress. Before entering politics, Crockett had built her reputation as a civil rights attorney, taking on predatory lenders who targeted vulnerable communities. Her election to Congress had been celebrated as bringing real-world expertise on economic justice issues to the legislative branch. Representative Crockett comes to us with unique insights into how banking practices affect marginalized communities, Chairman Brown had noted in his introduction. Her perspective from both legal practice and her work in the House Financial Services Committee offers valuable context for our deliberations. What Chairman Brown hadn't mentioned, but many in the room knew, was that Crockett had recently spearheaded a House investigation that had uncovered evidence of discriminatory lending algorithms at several major banks. Her team had compiled statistical proof showing how seemingly neutral financial formulas produce dramatically different results based on applicants' zip codes, effectively creating digital redlining. The tension between Sinema and Crockett had been brewing long before today's hearing. 3 weeks earlier, Crockett had appeared on MSNBC and criticized unnamed senators who take banking industry money with both hands, while claiming to represent working families. Though she hadn't mentioned Sinema by name, the reference was widely understood. Sinema had responded indirectly, telling a banking industry conference the following day that populist rhetoric about financial services rarely acknowledges the complex realities of capital markets. Again, no names were mentioned, but the target was clear. Now, face-to-face in the Senate Banking Committee hearing room, the stakes extended far beyond personal rivalry. The proposed Banking Fairness Act would impose strict limits on interest rates for certain loan products and require greater transparency in lending algorithms, changes that would fundamentally alter how banks operated in underserved communities. For Sinema, who was facing re-election the following year, the hearing represented a crucial opportunity to demonstrate her influence to financial industry donors, while maintaining her carefully crafted image as an independent thinker. For Crockett, it was a chance to leverage her expertise to advance protections for the very communities she had represented as an attorney. The audience watching from home included not just political junkies, but thousands of Americans directly affected by predatory lending, people who had lost homes, faced bankruptcy, or remained trapped in cycles of debt due to the very practices being discussed. Behind every technical policy point lay real human consequences, and both women knew it. But their visions of what constituted fair banking policy couldn't have been more different. As Sinema had launched her opening salvo, questioning Crockett's expertise and implying her youth and progressive background undermined her credibility. She had expected the typical congressional exchange of barbed comments and tense but ultimately inconsequential disagreement. The document now sitting in front of Crockett's microphone suggested this exchange would be anything but typical. "I'm not sure what document Representative Crockett is referring to," Sinema said smoothly, attempting to regain control of the exchange. Her voice maintained its pleasant tone, but those who knew her recognized the slight tightening around her eyes, a rare indicator that she was caught off guard. "But I'd be happy to review whatever information she believes is relevant." "I appreciate that, Senator," Crockett replied, her Texas accent more pronounced than usual, a tactic she sometimes employed when preparing to make a significant point. "This document should be quite familiar to you. It's the transcript from your closed-door meeting with the National Banking Association last month at the Phoenix Financial Forum." A ripple of murmurs spread through the committee room. This meeting had not been on Sinema's public schedule, and while rumors of its occurrence had circulated in political circles, no official confirmation or record had emerged, until now. "I attend many meetings with constituents from all industries," Sinema countered, her voice still composed, but her fingers now tapping lightly on the table. Another subtle tell. "That's part of a senator's job." "Of course," Crockett agreed. "What's unusual isn't that you met with banking representatives, but rather what you told them behind closed doors about this very legislation we're discussing today." She lifted the document and began to read. "I want to assure everyone in this room that the Banking Fairness Act in its current form will never pass the Senate. I've identified 6 provisions that go too far, and I've already communicated to leadership that these are my red lines. You have my commitment that I'll use every procedural tool available to ensure these provisions are either removed or significantly watered down." Crockett looked up from the paper. "Senator, this directly contradicts your public statement from last week when you told reporters you were carefully reviewing the bill with an open mind. Which position represents your actual stance?" The hearing room fell silent. Several senators leaned forward, equally surprised by both the existence of the transcript and the directness of Crockett's question. Chairman Brown, clearly unsure how to proceed, glanced at his staff. Sinema's expression remained composed, though a flush of color had risen to her cheeks. "I appreciate Representative Crockett's concern, but I'd question the authenticity of any supposed transcript of a private meeting. This appears to be a political stunt." "I anticipated that response, Senator," Crockett replied, extracting a second document. "Which is why I've also brought an affidavit from someone who was present at that meeting, attesting to the accuracy of this transcript. They were concerned enough about the discrepancy between your private assurances and public statements to document what occurred." Senator Warren leaned toward her microphone. "Mr. Chairman, I think it would be appropriate for the committee to review these documents before proceeding." "I agree," said Chairman Brown, seeming relieved to have a procedural path forward. "We'll take a brief recess to review." "If I may," Sinema interjected, her voice noticeably sharper. "Before we treat unsubstantiated claims as fact, I'd like to know how Representative Crockett obtained what she purports to be a transcript of a private meeting. This raises serious questions about potentially unethical information gathering." It was a skilled counterpunch, shifting attention from the content of the transcript to the means of its acquisition. Several Republican senators nodded in agreement. "That's a fair question," Crockett acknowledged, unruffled. "The transcript and affidavit were provided to my office by a whistleblower who works for one of the banks represented at that meeting. They were troubled by what they described as explicit promises to undermine consumer protections, while publicly claiming neutrality." Murmurs again spread through the room. The term whistleblower carried legal implications that complicated Sinema's attempt to dismiss the documents. "Furthermore," Crockett continued, "the whistleblower included something else that corroborates the transcript." She removed a third item from her portfolio, a thumb drive. This contains an audio recording of portions of the meeting, which matches the transcript word for word. Sinema's composure faltered visibly now. "Mr. Chairman, this is inappropriate. Representative Crockett is attempting to ambush me with selectively edited materials. No one on this committee has had the opportunity to verify." "Senator Sinema," Crockett responded before the chairman could intervene, "you questioned my expertise and implied I don't understand the delicate balance of financial regulation. I'm simply providing evidence that your own understanding of this balance seems to differ, significantly depending on whether you're speaking to the public or to banking executives." Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, known for his colorful commentary, let out a low whistle. "Well, this hearing just got more interesting than a fire at the circus." Chairman Brown, recognizing the escalating tension, tapped his gavel. "We'll take a 30-minute recess to review these materials and determine how to proceed." He turned to Crockett. "Representative, please provide copies to committee staff for distribution." As senators rose from their seats, cameras caught the stark contrast between the two women at the center of this unfolding drama. Sinema stood quickly, huddling with her staff, her normally fluid movements now stiff with barely contained tension. Crockett remained seated, calmly organizing her documents, the picture of composed readiness. Reporters in the gallery were already racing out to file their stories, while social media was erupting with early reports of the confrontation. What had begun as a routine hearing on banking regulations had transformed into a high-stakes test of political authenticity and transparency. And they were just getting started. When the Senate Banking Committee reconvened after the 30-minute recess, which had stretched to nearly an hour, the atmosphere in the hearing room had transformed. Additional media had crowded into the gallery, alerted by early reports of the confrontation. Staff members spoke in hushed tones at the periphery, while senators returned to their seats with expressions ranging from concern to poorly concealed excitement at the unexpected drama. The committee's legal counsel had distributed copies of Crockett's documents to all members, along with a preliminary authentication assessment. The audio file had been transferred to committee systems and reviewed by technical staff. Chairman Brown called the hearing back to order with a tap of his gavel. "The committee has had an opportunity to examine the materials provided by Representative Crockett. Our technical staff confirms the audio recording appears authentic and unedited. The speaker, identified as Senator Sinema, matches voice pattern recognition with 98% certainty." He turned towards Sinema, whose composed facade had returned during the break, though she now sat with perfect posture, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "Senator Sinema, would you like to address the committee regarding these materials?" Sinema leaned toward her microphone, her voice once again measured and professional. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman. During the break, I had the opportunity to refresh my memory about the meeting in question. While I contest certain characterizations in the transcript, I acknowledge that I did meet with banking industry representatives to hear their concerns about regulatory overreach. This careful semi-acknowledgement represented a strategic pivot, confirming the meeting's existence while creating room to dispute specific statements. As all members of Congress know," she continued, "we have conversations with constituents and